Welcome to The Sideshow. All right, welcome to The Sideshow. Today, Mark is going to be helming the episode. Mark, why don't you tell everyone what we're going to be talking about?
Well, thanks, Mike. And I am psyched today because we are going to be talking about AC/DC. This is really fresh in my mind. I actually had the opportunity to see AC/DC last week. They're on tour. They were in Detroit. I got together with my brother, our brother Tom, and we connected in Detroit and got a chance to see them. And I knew after seeing that concert, I was going to want to dig into an AC/DC album. And actually, when you're thinking about the modern day AC/DC, and we'll get into a little bit of the background of the band, but the current iteration of AC/DC, you tend to fall to Back in Black as the album that really kind of defines them. But I've actually decided to step back and go to an album before that, which is Highway to Hell, which is what we're going to do today. Highway to Hell, Side 1.
Well, and you and I saw AC/DC together on one occasion, and if my math is correct, that was 45 years ago. And
Please make it be incorrect. Please.
and Back in Black was brand new, and a lot of the material on Back in Black I heard for the first time at that concert.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Highway to Hell was the album and the song really that sort of introduced me to AC/DC back in high school. I think it's actually a great choice and very representative of AC/DC at its core.
Oh yeah.
Though I don't disagree with you that I think that Back in Black was the album that really put them on the map in kind of a mass success sort of way.
Well, it was Back in Black was a huge album. In fact, it's the second highest selling rock album of all time in the United States. I mean that you're talking a lot of good albums, and Back in Black really did it. I'd have to say, and you just mentioned this. I mean, what we were listening to though, that got us to want to go see AC/DC in the first place was Highway to Hell.
Yeah.
That's what, and then there's some other previous material that is fun to listen to, and it's really enjoyable stuff. But Highway to Hell was their first big stamp on commercial success, wide global audience, and some really good music. I mean, just some straight up basic rock and roll music. And Side 1 especially is the type, as we listened to and said, I'd like to go see these guys in concert. And if you'll remember, that was kind of a different concert for us. We went and kind of got our feet wet in going to see rock concerts at the Brown County Arena up in Green Bay.
Yeah.
Saw a number of concerts up there. It was the prices were I think $8 for a concert ticket. The venue was a decent size. It was big enough where you got the feel that you're in a big show, but it wasn't huge. It was
arena rock.
Yeah, an arena. And Milwaukee, though, is where AC/DC was. And this was a different type of experience for us as high schoolers going down to Milwaukee. And I can remember as soon as we got in there, I had an incredible sense of being out of my league. I think we stopped in at the bathroom first on the way in, and some guy in a leather motorcycle jacket was throwing up in the sink. And I mean, just everything from there, the age of the people, just the kind of just roughness of the crowd. I had a sense that I was around a lot of people that were much farther down the journey of the Highway to Hell than I presently was. Now, I'm not saying I didn't continue there in some sense, but it it was a much more, I'm going to call it a much more adult experience for me, certainly, going down there and see them. So I was already a little out of my element before the band even started playing.
Well, and going up to the concerts at the Brown County Arena, it was a smaller place. The Fox Valley, Appleton, Green Bay, and
Yeah.
is a smaller market. You'd see people from high school, other people that you knew from Appleton. You'd see them up there, and you learned, even in Green Bay, you learned that kind of what goes on inside a rock concert was a little different than what went on outside of a rock concert
Yeah.
in terms of what the powers that be were willing to tolerate.
Yeah.
In terms of smoking marijuana, for example, and blah blah blah. But my impression is when we went down to Milwaukee. I mean, they played at the Milwaukee Auditorium.
Yeah.
The Mecca Auditorium, which is right downtown. And like you say, we come down from Appleton with some friends, and here we are right down in downtown Milwaukee, and it was it was a step up in terms of the intensity of the scene, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And the opening act for that concert was Blackfoot.
Yes.
Which was another loud,
yes,
hard rock band of the day. Never as popular. They were kind of a poor man's Leonard Skinner, sort of thing. They're a good band. I mean, but that was a hard rockin', loud concert.
Yeah.
Any way to slice it.
I remember Blackfoot being louder than AC/DC was as they were playing. So it was a great concert. It did introduce us, and certainly myself, to a lot of the songs that became just regular, playable music from the album Back in Black that have become classics now. That anybody that listens to classic rock knows and is very familiar with. That was the very first time that we heard them, and I will never forget, as long as I live. Back in those times, late '70s, early '80s, the bands liked to keep the crowds waiting a really long time before they started. That was just kind of common practice, whether they were all messed up in the back trying to get their act together, or they just wanted to do it to increase the tension. Probably a little of both. So you waited a long time, and the anticipation was there. But when AC/DC finally came out, and that bell started slowly coming down from above the stage, and then out comes, I think it was Brian Johnson with the sledgehammer, right, to begin to
bang on the bell,
and you start to get this bone down. It was an amazing start to this show. And I mean, let's face it, AC/DC's music, and we'll go a little bit more in depth. It's very accessible. There is
very straightforward.
Exactly. There is nothing where you're scratching your head wondering where they're going with this music, and your foot is tapping after. You don't go too far into a song. You've got what's going on, and even in a live, kind of arena situation, getting really comfortable with the music very quickly. An amazing job of it, and really, even increase this kind of spark about enjoying the music of this band. So that was kind of the start. I've seen them several times since then. I saw them last week in Detroit. I also saw them in Stuttgart, Germany when I was in the service. I had an interesting arrangement with a person who worked with my ex-wife. He was an older guy, but he had a 16-year-old son. So he was a little old for the concert experience. And what he would do is he would find concerts that his son wanted to go to, and then he'd buy my ticket and give me gas money to take his son to the concert. And, he'd be like...
which was perfect for you.
It was perfect for me. And he'd come up, it's like, yeah. What about we got Rick Springfield in Frankfurt? And I'm like, I think I'm going to take a pass on that. And then it's like, well, how about AC/DC in Stuttgart? And I'm like, I'm in. That was one of the concerts, and like we were talking about, I mean, the American community on these concerts would kind of move around and go to them, and as soon as we'd get there, he'd be, we'd hey, meet right here when the concert's over, and he'd be with his friends, and I'd have people from my unit that were there, and we'd meet up, and that was one of the bands that I got to see in Germany. Very similar show. With some added material because by then they were doing some other things. I saw them another time, I think also in Europe, and then I saw them here in Detroit. A lot of the standards you could just kind of hear them the same way that they had been done, but it was still a great concert, great experience. One warning for they're kind of on the beginning of their tour, so some people I'm sure will be seeing them. You could tell at the end that Brian, and he, tell you what, he was on playing their stuff. You could tell he was probably tiring out a little bit vocally at the end, because I mean these songs are asking a lot of anyone's voice, and they kind of went into kind of an extended guitar solo to end the main segment before they came out and did an encore with For Those About to Rock. And the cannons and these types of things that have become, the types of things where you're hearing it for about 3 days after the show. Again, though, great show. All the good ones, they're in there, and I really enjoyed it. But it brought me back to thinking about the band more.
When they, one thing about AC/DC is that they're what you're going to get. I mean, there's no, I wonder if they're not going to change their style. They're not going to, what you're going to get. They're they're very reliable band in terms of providing the audience what they are looking for.
Yep.
Because that show that we saw back in high school, I mean, there with the stage, it was just a bunch of Marshall amps. There was no monkey business. There was no, I mean, there were lights on the band, but there was no, it wasn't really a light show. It was just lights so you could see the band and focusing on this and that. And Angus Young had his schoolboy outfit on.
Yep.
And they just cranked it out. And, one slab after another. And which the way you're describing the concert that you and Tom went to last week, that's what they did.
Yep.
I'll tell you though, Angus Young in that concert back in high school, he did not stop moving that entire concert. I mean, he was headbanging that entire concert.
And then the same thing the other times that I've seen him, he was still moving along. Now this is a guy, I mean, he's got to be in his 70s. And he's still not quite as hard. But he, instead of when he's marching, playing his guitar, he's got a look. He's playing his guitar. He's got these short pants, kind of school outfit type suit on, and the suit jacket came off a little bit earlier than it had in previous concerts, kind of heating up. And when he would stand there marching, playing, instead of his knees coming all the way up to his waist every single time, it was more kind of marching in place. But when he'd get jamming and he kind of has a way of kind of that marching and hopping and skipping his way across the stage, looked just like when we first saw him. I mean, he still was moving around. A little bit of understandable slowdown, but he still clearly gives it everything he's got. And I mean, Angus Young is a huge part of what AC/DC is. That kind of life, that power in the guitar and the performance, putting on an amazing show.
Plugged in and powered up.
Exactly. And he still is. I mean, just by far, there was a, well, as we go back through the background, obviously a change in lead singers, and that can create the absence of a front man for a lot of bands, but not for AC/DC. No. Because even though he's not out there on the vocals, which tends to get a lot of the attention, he is clearly the front man
Yeah.
of AC/DC. So, just a little bit of background on the band. They formed back in 1973 in Sydney. They had a couple lineup changes across the band. The real only consistency from the very first days were the brothers Angus and Malcolm Young, the lead and rhythm guitar players. But they settled in fairly quickly after an album or two on the vocalist Bon Scott and their other the drums Phil Rudd and Cliff Williams on the bass. But their first album was called High Voltage in 1974. They got into the routine like a lot of classic rock bands did of putting out an album every year, getting a lot of content out there, and like a lot of classic rock bands, not necessarily getting a lot of traction early on, right? Getting into the groove, touring for each album. In 1975, they had the album TNT, which had one of their early hits, It's a Long Way to the Top, If You Want to Rock and Roll, which is still known and listened to by a lot of folks. They had some record label stuff and some stops and starts going on, and they came out with another album entitled High Voltage, which was really a combination of the tracks of those first two albums, and that kind of became then the mode of the albums after that. In 1976, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap came out, started to see a little more traction, not necessarily in the United States, but in the Australian and UK markets. 1977, Let There Be Rock. 1978, what is this? I can't read my writing here. Is this Powerage? Power Up.
Power Rage.
Power Rage. Jesus. What's my timing here? 17, 18. In 1978, you had Power Rage. And from touring for that album, they went and did some touring globally, and some concerts at the Apollo in Glasgow were recorded, and they came out with a live album, If You Want Blood, You Got It, that came from that tour. So now you're talking a pretty large number of albums, a lot of material, and really kind of a crossroads on what they were going to do. With discussions with the record company, the record company made a decision that their brother George Young, who had been doing a lot of the production, needed to go, and they were going to bring in a kind of a more high-powered producer to work with the band. Now, on the one hand, the notion that the record company is pushing you around on personnel is one thing. It's also, though, an indication from the record company that they saw some talent here and just needed to get this band with the right production crew. And in this case, it was Robert John or Mutt Lange who they brought in. And this turned out to be a brilliant move. Although hated by the band originally, the fact that they had to make this change, they learned pretty quickly that this guy actually had contributions to make to what the band was doing. Subsequent interviews and documentaries and stuff about the band talked about how Mutt was able to actually help Bon Scott do better vocals by helping him with breathing and working with Angus on the guitar and his guitar solos. He actually had contributions to make musically, as well as all the other work that goes along with production. So this idea of a band, regardless of their level of talent, coming into contact with the right producer, which can really be just a catalyst to get them where they need to be. And
because there is a big difference between going on stage and cranking out music and going into a studio and getting down on tape what it is you want.
Yeah,
those are different things, and so making your music come alive in the studio is a different endeavor than pleasing a crowd when you're playing live.
Exactly. And at this time, AC/DC actually had a pretty growing live following. They were known as a good live band. they were opening for a lot of huge acts that were doing tours. So they were known as a good live band. And again, that kind of shows that there was the record companies knew these guys had some talent. So this change, and Mutt Lange became their producer for that and two more albums, which were Back in Black, second biggest selling album of all time, and For Those About to Rock, which was, those three albums make up at what is the power of the AC/DC catalog. Some of these previous albums had some very good rock and roll that was in it, but when you look at the notion of traction that bands are able to get and growing their audiences, these three albums are really what did it for AC/DC. So 1979, they get in the studio with the right producer, and Highway to Hell is produced. It's released in 1979. And this was a significantly greater success for them than they had. The touring on this was fantastic, and they began to work right away on their next album, which was Back in Black. And while they were working on this album, their lead singer Bon Scott died of an alcohol overdose in London. A late night of drinking, and never woke up. Obviously devastating, not only for the closeness that the band had and the success they'd had, but they were halfway through this next album and sitting. This is an example of a band that was sitting and they could see the pliers. They were about to get their hands on really a key point in the music industry when this happened. So really tough news for them.
One of the things that I thought back then was that Brian Jones slipped into that role, or Brian Johnson. Because his voice was different. He was probably a better singer than Bon Scott. That's not to say that means he was a better rock and roll vocalist, but he was certainly a better singer. And he was able to kind of establish himself in the new material, but he did a good job singing the old material.
Yes.
Because I can remember that from the concert, thinking, yeah, this guy sounds, he does all this stuff good, and
absolutely.
So he turned out to be a good replacement, and was a little. Bon Scott was had a fairly salacious manner about him,
yes,
in terms of his what he sang about and how I never saw him perform live, but I can imagine he was a more slithery character on stage than Brian Johnson was, and Brian Johnson was just more well tailored for that kind of mainstream success that they found after Back in Black.
Yeah, and I'd agree with you. In fact, again, reading what they talked about after the fact, they were not looking for like a cover band singer that could sing exactly like Bon Scott could when they were doing the replacement. A different type of style, yet could perform those old standards that crowds were going to be looking for, because they were still a live band and they still knew they were going to tour, and they still knew what crowds were going to want to hear. So but Back in Black, again, critical album for their success, critical album in the whole history of classic rock. They were already into the production of this album with Bon Scott, so you're really hearing some of him in this in that album as well. And they followed that up a year afterwards in 1981 with For Those About to Rock, We Salute You. And that really, they had a lot of material after that. There's a number of albums that continue to roll out. There were some lineup changes. The band got into some legal and health problems that demanded some changes as well. And, they never, though, although continuing to be incredibly popular while touring, and we're still taught they continue to be a stadium band, a stadium act to fill out crowds on their tours. Their album production and traction of those albums never really reached that point again.
No.
So let's talk about Highway to Hell. And This was recorded in London. They had put an incredible amount of time into preparing to go into the studio, which was different for them. They were really much more accustomed to, spending a couple weeks in the studio to put out an album and then touring. That's what they focused on. This particular album, again, we got a new producer. We've got kind of different rules with what's happening. They had a pretty grueling situation of several months, and we're talking, according to their recollections and stuff, 15-hour days, really working to get this music together. And then they actually hit the studio and spent about 3 additional weeks actually getting the everything down on tracks. So it was a much more rigorous and demanding schedule than what they had, but the results were awfully good. I mean, Highway to Hell is an 8-time platinum album. It's it's well known for a number of its tracks that are standards on classic rock radio stations to this day.
Well, and it's and everything is relative. I mean, the harder you work, the more time you put in, the more preparation, the more rehearsal, the better things are going to be in terms of if you're trying to create something. And while there was a sort of a scrappy authenticity to their music going all the way back to the very beginning of at least their album output, they were able to maintain the authenticity, but do it better.
Yeah.
By taking the additional time. And this isn't necessarily the best comparison, but it in the movie Sid and Nancy, when Sid Vicious is kind of doing some solo concerts, and the manager that gets him the date says, things would go a lot better if you would rehearse.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, AC/DC, I'm sure that they rehearsed and they were a professional, band and whatnot. But putting your nose to it and taking the time and doing a little planning is worthwhile. And so basically you kind of laid it out in a lot more detail, but it paid off.
Yeah.
I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. It paid off.
Absolutely. And what it produced, I've got the album here. And you've got the, again, our man Angus, right? As he is the central figure in this picture. If you look at that, and a lot of times people would look at this and think, well, that's probably the lead singer of the band, whereas Bon Scott is down here. The lead man for the band was absolutely Angus Young. Here's the back, of the band, and again, this is the concert attire of Angus Young. These short, every single show that I've seen him in, the videos, that type of thing. That is his persona, and he does it awfully well. Again, this. I collect albums now, and I go and I do a lot of shopping at garage sales and that type of thing. And this one was present in a lot of album collections from the 70s and 80s.
Well, it is sort of right at the heart, and AC/DC is not one of my favorite bands, and I don't listen to a lot of music that's quite as hard rock as AC/DC. But, and there's just no question that, like Highway to Hell, Back in Black, those albums are just at the heart of classic rock.
Yes.
They just are.
And you can, we talk about a lot of bands, and when you take a look at their songs, there's a lot of complexity in the songs. There's a lot of complexities in the stories that they're trying to tell. I mean, one of the notions is they were getting ready for this album. I mean, I wasn't in the studio reading about how this stuff was put together, but one of Bon Scott's complaints were, why do the songs have to be so complex? And this was from their previous AC/DC material. And if you listen to that again, this is not scholarly stuff. It's like, look at we're a rock and roll band. Let's just sing about sex and drugs and rock and roll. What more do we need to sing about? And there you can take a band like Bad Company, for example. And Bad Company they are a stripped down band that sings about rock and roll. They are a rock and roll band. And you're not going to hear long stories. You're not going to hear rock operas. You're not, and not that there isn't some outstanding music out there that does that. But it's like, no, we're just going to play rock and roll. Even looking at like Led Zeppelin, and it's like, no, these time changes and that type of thing to really kind of create a different type of experience. And again, some wonderful music, some great rock and roll music. But you also had bands that says we don't need any of that shit. We're just and AC/DC is even scaled down farther than Bad Company. I mean, this is just core rock and roll music. We got guitar, we got drums, we've got vocals, and we are going to sing about sex and drugs and rock and roll, and that's what we're gonna do. And at the same time, though, you can do that. You can just go out, and I think that you gave one example about Sid Vicious and some of the things that sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. It can be done in a way where even though you've got a simple message, you can have some very clever, intelligent ways of communicating it. And more importantly, you can mix it in the way that the vocals mix with the music, where it just works. Every aspect of what you're hearing is playing into a beat and to a rhythm that makes it easy for the audience to enjoy it. And I think that is what AC/DC has captured, especially on this album.
I mean, to just kind of quickly follow up on what you were saying, back before our daughter and son were born, I played bass guitar with some guys here in Rhinelander. And we played covers, and we'd play out at bars and stuff like that. And I had never played an instrument like that. I don't read music and blah, blah, blah. And we got to the point where we're pretty good. And the point I'm trying to make is if my level of skill, which was kind of at the lower end of the totem pole, I could fill a pocket and I could stick with the drummer. I mean, I could keep the beat. Is about the extent of my skill, but the music was good because we don't need to pretty this up. Let's just put it out. And the guys in AC/DC, I mean, Angus Young and his brother and the rhythm section, the drummer and the bass player, they were good players. Mm-hmm. They weren't virtuoso players, but they were good players.
Yes. And also, I mean, lyrics can be simple. That doesn't mean that they're stupid, right? Some of the best, just nailed it lyrics come out from AC/DC. In fact, I would say it's from Back in Black, but the lyrics on You Shook Me All Night Long, the way that song starts is probably, to me, just the most nailed it lyrics. And that, she was a fast machine. She kept her motor clean. She was the best damn woman that I ever seen. I mean, it's perfect. I mean, it really nails. She was the best damn woman, and it rhymes well, and it fits so well into the music as well.
Yeah. Well, and when you're at the AC/DC concert and you're checking out the chicks bopping to the tunes, you think stuff like that.
Exactly. So we hear on the first song of the side, Highway to Hell, title track of the album, huge song. One of those songs that, AC/DC listener, lover, or not, rock listener or not, you probably know this song.
Yeah.
In fact, you probably can sing along to the chorus or have had people doing it. It plays in hockey arenas during, in half times to fire up the crowd. It's really ubiquitous with rock music, and it's another example where they do a great job of rolling very straightforward lyrics, but doing it well, and it just rolls so well with the music. And the band talks of, Highway to Hell, we're rock and rollers, we're heading towards hell or whatever. The band talks about this was more of a description of when they were touring. And, again, there's a lot that goes into touring, from being hard work and exhausting, but also some, a little moral flexibility is sometimes required to kind of keep up with all the antics. But again, very just, this is what we're doing, straightforward, and although simple, they work. An example is, as we roll into the second verse, it's no stop signs, speed limit, nobody's gonna slow me down. And you can just, no stop signs, speed limit. We're operating in a world of no rules, right? On where we're going and where we're heading. And very straightforward chorus that easy to sing along to, and just a guitar that keeps moving. Great guitar that rolls along with this song as well.
Well, I guess there's two things that I guess I'd have to say about this song. It's a party anthem.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's all these rules and expectations, and it's just like, fuck you, man. I want to party.
Yeah.
Back in high school, I mean, there was a phrase that people would say. You'd see people on a Friday night or something. Hey man, party down.
Yeah.
Party down. And that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what this song is about to me. No, Highway to Hell and Damnation and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I here's, I guess, the best way to describe what I'm trying to say. When in the movie Animal House, there's the part in the movie where they're in class and the professor is played by Donald Sutherland.
Yeah.
And he's talking about the students have to read Paradise Lost, and he takes the apple off of his desk and says, "Was Milton trying to say that being bad was more fun than being good?"
Yeah. Yep.
AC/DC's answer was yes.
Yes.
Yes. So that's my take on what Highway to Hell is
absolutely
about.
And it's the notion that you're going to spend some time on a Friday or Saturday night, or you're gonna take a weekend and go to Vegas or something like that, and for a little bit of time, you're not going to make every decision based on what is the absolutely best thing for you to do. And maybe you're going to focus for just a little while on what's a fun thing for me to do, and which party down, welcome to the party, whatever you want to say. It really kind of captured that. And again, a party anthem is really the perfect descriptor for it. And it was an anthem that played at a lot of parties. Incredibly popular song. I have to say though, probably my third favorite song on this side, personally, which is one of the reasons that I really enjoy this side. We're going to go to my favorite, which is the next song. And it's a song called Girls Got Rhythm. And I love this song. I love it. And this is the song. It's got a very fast moving riff that gets you going. Your heart is pounding, your foot is tapping right away, and then Bon Scott's special way, the Bon Scott sound of lyrics kicks right in, and he's got a way of kind of rolling and really emphasizing some of his words. And it's like, I've been around the world, and then I've seen a million girls, and just he just sucks you right into this kind of quick talking about, hey, I've known a lot of women, but none like this woman that I'm going to talk about in this particular song. And I love the song. I love the feel to it. I love the guitar in it. And the song has got even a stronger message, which I'll get to in a second.
Well, it definitely is a faster paced song. than Highway to Hell. It has a leaner guitar sound. And, obviously the Girls Got Rhythm, it has a musical connotation, but it is clearly a sexual connotation as well. He's singing about his woman.
Yeah.
And she is a whole lot of woman.
Yeah.
Says Bon Scott.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a song though that women like. Chicks dig this song, and and I look at this, and yes, there's a lot of aspects of this song that is talking about that rhythm is it's the backseat rhythm. It is that that idea of, look at this this woman has good sex, right, with this woman. And first of all, this has a way of capturing the imagination and just the joy of women, much like other songs like this do. I don't know if you were there at Rockfest when the band Buckcherry was there singing the song "Crazy Bitch," but that song I have never seen. There was thousands of women that were jumping up and down and screaming those lyrics as hard as they could. If you're not familiar with the song, it's oh, this woman, she's a crazy bitch. But she fucks so good is what he, that's what he finds attractive about her. And
there came a point where most of the women that I was hanging around with disapproved of such things.
Well,
in terms of that kind of lyrical content in music.
The lyrical content, and even suggesting here that's like, look, the way that she has sex. I think what connects, though, and again, once you get to the point where you don't want to hear that kind of language in songs or whatever, that's a whole different situation. But the notion that there is an X factor that women can have that is not necessarily associated with how attractive they are, that can make them incredibly desirable to men, I think is an attractive notion to women, because there are many women. I am a man that is not incredibly handsome and movie star type quality. And I like the idea myself that there are other things, X factors, that I can have that can make me attractive to women. And the idea that, look at, this girl's got rhythm. Now, you listen to the lyrics, she also happens to be a hot woman who looks good in a dress. But this song is not called Girls Hot. This song is not called This Girl is a Tall Drink of Water. This song is not called This Girl Has Large Breasts. This song is The Girl's Got Rhythm. And, it's just like a band. You can't tell if a band has rhythm or not by looking at an album cover. You've got to hear them. You've got to give them a shot to find out if they have rhythm. And this notion of look, I'm not going to judge you by what you look like. I'm going to give you a shot. And I want to see if you've got rhythm. And the feel and the optimism of it, when you listen to the chorus of this song, the way that the girl's got a rhythm, and he's just so happy about it. He's with this girl and she's got rhythm, and it's a moving song. I love the way that the song flows. It's fast. It's got great guitar that goes along with it, and I like the message of the song about what look, yes, she's tall, she looks good in a dress, but what I like about her, she's got rhythm.
Well, and you picture, a lot of females would hear this song and like it and be into it. And it's sort of like some of the funnest women that I've ever known were the sort of women who would, like, if you're out at a bar where there's a band playing or whatever, a party where there's music playing and people are dancing, would dance with anybody.
Yeah.
And get into it. But just the fact that she was willing to dance with anybody, and maybe she'd find someone and it would turn out that they had rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
But just the fact that she was willing to dance with everyone didn't mean she was willing to, hop into the back seat with anyone.
Yeah.
And so the fact that that men and women can get together and sort of loosen up a little bit and have some fun, even if things get a little salacious, doesn't isn't it can be fun without being just there's a balance there.
Yeah.
And back in it just seemed like back in those days it was easier to strike that balance with females.
Yeah. Well, and I like, first of all, the idea that there's a lot of classic rock that is primarily attractive, or was attractive, to teenage boys. And the notion that you've got songs that are out there that are also fan favorites of women in the crowd, that's a good thing. We need and needed more of those back in the day, and I certainly think that this was one of them. A very fun song, a very moving song. Get a little more. The pace was faster, not as hard and heavy as Highway to Hell.
It was
but kind
it
of
was
a great
leaner.
follow. Yes,
leaner song.
So we moved from Girls Got Rhythm to the third song, which is Walk All Over You, and this is kind of interesting. This has some kind of some change ups that go in it. It starts out, it's kind of got this guitar riff, this short riff, and then some drums, and then the riff returns, and then some drums, and the riff, and then finally you move into the guitar. So there's kind of an anticipation for the song to really get moving. It's got some stops and starts to get you into it. And then the band all comes in, and it's also a quick moving song in the verses. The choruses kind of step back, and it's more of like a rugby style sing along almost, right? Kind of this as they go into this, I want to walk all over you, with kind of a chorus that would be put together that would only perform at closing time in the pub, right? A little raucous and that type of thing. But Walk All Over You might be, if as you listen to the song again, okay, if a song's going to be about sex, drugs, or rock and roll, well, this one's about sex. Is where we have. There's a lot of talks about reflections on the bedroom wall and these types of things. And Walk All Over You might better be described as crawl all over you, or wiggle all over you, or lay all over you. It's more of exploring someone while they're going at it at the end of the night, but done in a way where the music takes more of the focus, I feel, than the topic of the song.
Well, I mean, this is in this song, the singer, he wants to take a woman and make her his.
Yep.
And that's about the short, or that's the short and long of it. And the slower intro, and then when the music picks up, I mean, it kicks into an almost punk rock like speed. Mm-hmm. But then it goes back into the slow.
Yes.
For the chorus of the I want to walk all over you.
Yeah.
But it's very not particularly nuanced.
Yeah.
Message. And it's very, the message is very different from Girls Got Rhythm. This was not focusing on the girl. This was focusing on, here's what I want.
Exactly.
Here's what I want. And
yes, not so much what you're lusting for, but what you're going to do. And the, again, kind of still moving though. This is all very, foot tapping, driving music with very fast moving vocals. Yet, and this is the thing, which is one of the things that I really like about AC/DC vocals. Even though you've got a person who's talking and who's singing with a bit of an Australian accent, there is an accent that's to it, and in some cases that higher pitch type song that you get in a lot of heavy metal, you can still understand the lyrics though. You know, you can, if you just stop and listen, you can understand what they're saying. If that's what you want to do, if you want to stop banging your head to the very enjoyable guitar that is coming along with it.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. And I don't know. I mean, there's really not a lot else there in the song.
Just and it takes you. That's the third song on the side. It does take you though to my second favorite song on this side, and that is "Touch Too Much." And this song, it starts out again it starts out with kind of a driving type driving type, very kind of poking, pushing,
almost funky.
Yes.
Almost.
And you're kind of bopping around a little bit, and then again, this is how Bon Scott's vocals just meshed with this that kind of funky push of the song, and he had a way of just emphasizing particular words that was almost like a drum beat vocally. It's like, it was one of those nights when you turned out the lights, and you feel lyrically, it's like the lyrics are another instrument, yet at the same time, again, you being understandable. Such a weird combination. You hear bands that their lyrics are very straightforward, but the way that you're able to understand them is they're almost talking as the song comes out. And then you have other much more vocalist type singers that are but in order to do that, they become a little bit more hard to understand or really comprehend and take it in while you're listening to it without studying the lyrics on the record album. But AC/DC just wasn't like that. They were able to combine this fast moving, driving music with solid lyrical content, but you could understand it at the same time, which I love. I love being able to have that while you're listening to music.
I mean, their music was, meat, potatoes, and vegetables.
Yeah.
There you have it. No béarnaise sauce. Just different combinations of, maybe a little butter, sometimes a salt and pepper, but otherwise just different combinations of the basic ingredients.
Yes.
And they managed to do a fair amount with just that.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of bands that there just isn't much to them. You're trying to stick to the basics, and sometimes you've got to depend on musical effects, lots of synthesizers and sound effects, bringing in strings along with the music for the type of music that you're trying to do or you're accomplishing. Or you need that for, to augment the talent of the band. You have a band though like AC/DC, they weren't trying to achieve complexity. What they were trying to achieve was just straight rock and roll, right?
There are no keyboards. There are no keyboards on this side. No, it's just drums, bass, rhythm guitar, a lead guitar, and vocals. That's it.
Yeah, and sometimes hey, look, German beer has 4 ingredients. That's it, and you come up with some pretty damn good beer, right? You're not going to make wine with that. Right, with that, you're not going to make fancy champagne with that. But if you just want to make good beer, you need 4 ingredients. Done right, put together right, again, with the right kind of a drive, some thought put into the lyrics that mesh with some solid guitar and some good production, and that's what you come out. So this song is a great example of that, of really putting together kind of an interesting story. Again, now, you're talking about a lot of touching too much, I mean, we're, again, not a whole lot of depth in what we're talking about. We are, if we're going to talk about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, well, again, we'll talk a little bit about sex here.
This song, it sort of reverses the man-woman perspective from the previous song.
Yes.
And, the singer is with a very sexual woman who's not interested in any emotional entanglements, and kind of she's giving Bonds like some of his own medicine. I mean, she wants to walk all over him.
Yeah.
And so that's the sort of woman that he's singing about. You know, geez,
Yeah.
this might even be too much.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I'm with a woman who wants to have too much sex.
Yeah.
Which doesn't, you know, that doesn't really seem to be where he's coming from. That seems to be something that's kind of an oxymoron for Bon Scott.
Yeah, well,
lyrically.
I mean,
but that's what he's singing about.
Exactly, and you know, it seems to be an oxymoron for a lot of high school boys as well. But something that they could all aspire to, right?
Yeah.
We can dream, right, of finding ourselves in that situation. So, the just an enjoyable song, and what you've got now is you've started with this, you know, Highway to Hell, this anthem, heavier, you know, harder kind of song, but then they followed up with three just kind of fast moving, and all three of them are pretty fun songs to listen to sing along to as well. And we end up with Beating Around the Bush, which is actually the fastest of all the songs on the side. I'd say this is I look at the first four songs on this side, and I think that all four of them are material that a lot of bands would be happy to have for a greatest hits album. I mean, these just classic, greatest hits caliber songs. Beating Around the Bush is, I wouldn't put in that category. I wouldn't call it filler. It's a good song, right? We close out. It's a very upbeat, fast moving type of song. A lot of guitar work that goes into the song. There's not so much of a vocal rhythm. They're pushing the lyrics out very, very quickly and very rapidly. Not as performative in the lyrics in this particular song.
It's definitely a guitar rave up.
Oh yeah.
And you know, like the riff is kind of reminiscent of like Whole Lotta Rosie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the earlier songs. So it's a little more primitive, but has that. It sounds like it reminds me of some of the earlier AC/DC songs.
Yeah.
The one I mean, Whole Lotta Rosie in particular.
Yeah, and the relationship with a man and woman, beating around the bush. You could very quickly with the title. There's some of this that are immediately comes to mind. But this actually, this lyric is probably more complexity around a relationship than all the other songs on this particular side. But still, you got a guy, you got a girl, not everything's perfect. There's a little bit of meanness and that type of thing that are in here.
The poor guy's got a woman who ain't being straight with him.
That's right. Yeah,
that's what's going on.
Things are not always rosy on the woman front. So but again, kind of certainly not a. Although I don't think it's the best song on the side. Again, I think because we're talking about such a high bar, certainly a good way to wrap the side up. Very upbeat, quick, good guitar that's in there, kind of keeps you going, keeps you moving, and really brings the song, the side, to an end.
Well, I tend to agree with you that the three songs that you've pointed out, I think, are the three high standout tracks on the side. But you're getting an AC/DC fan that put this on the day they brought it back from the record store. This would fit the bill.
Yeah.
This is straight up AC/DC.
Yeah.
And the lyrical content is probably the least significant in this song than any of the others.
Yeah.
Because the phrase that came into my mind was, "This is a guitar rave up."
Yes.
Was the words that came into my mind, to try to describe what this song was, and so that's more the focus than what he's singing about.
And I'd also say this is probably, even if you're deeply familiar with all of this music, this song is probably the one that you're not really going to get anybody singing along to. It's not that kind of song. The way that the lyrics are and that type of thing. This, you do have some of the lyrics that are almost spoken. Out. It just doesn't have that same kind of feel. But again, it's a different type of way to wrap up this album, which it is. You're going to be tired of singing along by this time anyway, because the first four are standards that a lot of people know, and I know for a fact they played a couple of these in Detroit, even though these were from the Bon Scott era, and my voice is still doing a little bit of recovery from it.
I wish I would have been able to come.
Yeah, but wish could have you there, and we'll look for the right type of show for that to happen. But so what we have here, the other side, even though we have like just this legendary song, Highway to Hell, that leads this side off, leads this album off. And I would argue it's a lot of people in the streaming era are going to stream Highway to Hell and listen to that and be done with it. One of the great things about the notion of listening to a side is you get the rest of this content. You might have bought it for Highway to Hell, but as you listen to the rest, and you'd be missing so much without doing that. Because as I said, I feel, and I've listened to a lot of AC/DC, that this is, Highway to Hell is number 3 on this particular side. So give the entire side a listen. Side 1 of Highway to Hell, a great group of songs, a great listen from a great band.
It definitely. I mean, and I don't put on AC/DC that often these days, but listening to the side, preparing for today's podcast, it brought back good memories.
Exactly. All right. That was Highway to Hell by AC/DC, side 1.
All right. We will talk to you, Mark, next time.